ultimately this is very hopeful what I'm presenting to you, but it's also very stirring. There's insights and perspectives that you may not have heard before, and it can stir you up. But remember, ultimately, this is very hopeful long term. So I want you to feel very safe in speaking up. Two friends are here, friends of Leo, parts of Leo. Jeff Van Stratton's back there. He's been a CEO of multiple companies and brought us into multiple companies. So he's got a really great perspective on what it can do for you personally, as well as for groups of people. Jennifer Anderson is back there also, and she's expert at leadership and organizational transformation, but also understands these concepts really well. So she's a really good dot connector for you as leaders and these kinds of ideas. So that's why I wanted them to also join. Yeah, so we'll trudge along. I try to strike a balance in letting you just raise your hand and talk. I want you to feel comfortable to talk and dot connect to your lived experience. And we had a big event, obviously, over the weekend, which I will dot connect to in terms of the brain science of why we're struggling as Americans and how what we need to do, especially educators. To me, you're the most important people in society. And what you can do to help yourself stay stable, and then go on to empower others to deal with this chaos that what modern existence represents. A lot of rapid change and chaos, and it's very psychologically destabilizing. And I'll explain in particular why it's been so for Americans, but very hopeful things that we can do very quickly to become stable again psychologically and get back to what we're really great at, which is being innovative and creative and entrepreneurial in all aspects of society. So yeah, feel free to raise your hand, but I'll also try to get through so we can get to some of the practical tools that you can take with you and apply. Some of the criticism that I've gotten in the past, and I'm open to any feedback. I want this to be better and better for you. Is that sometimes we get lost in the weeds and don't get to the practical stuff that you can take with you and apply. So we'll try to strike a balance between dot connecting versus application. Don't worry about taking notes. For the most part, we're recording it in two ways, and I'll send you the slides afterwards. So I'll send you all the slides. If it's not on the slide and you want to take a note, I certainly understand. And then as far as other QA opportunities, we have lunch. You can keep peppering me with questions during lunch. That doesn't bother me. I could talk about this stuff endlessly. And then there's other chances we can get together over time with Zooms. So the basic concept here, because sometimes you'll be inundated with ideas, but just to stay anchored into the big picture, what we're going to talk about is brain hacks that allow you to increase your tolerance for discomfort. We'll show you the part of the brain that's constantly creating discomfort and damage and disengagement. Engagement is a big theme that you wanted to talk about, Casey. We'll talk about how to shut this off to go back to being really engaged with life as educators, but also for your students. And so we want to actually increase our tolerance for discomfort so we can stay psychologically stable and stay very creative and joyful and connected. So that's the idea: is brain hacks, practice discomfort, keep this virtuous cycle going. Sprinkle in more brain hacks, increase your tolerance for discomfort, practice being uncomfortable, and just see what happens in your life over sometimes minutes, hours, days. Change will happen. So that's the big picture. What we're going to do is keep learning some brain hacks and then do some practice of being uncomfortable and practice those brain hacks. That's the big picture of what we're going to do today. Okay. Let me make sure this is clicked. So where this stuff comes from and why I am completely non-judgmental of anybody with any kind of mental health issue is that I had a lot of, I'm 57 now. When I started med school at a pretty young age. I was pretty good academically. I started when I was 20. But then the transition back then from second year to third year of med school is quite dramatic. It's all books to all life and people. I was great at the books part and even the sports part. So I was able to be hidden. My mental health issues were hidden by external success. And then the transition to third year in med school was just really rocked me. I went from being top of the class to bottom of the class because it turns out I had no life skills, relationships, presentation, organization. I was super ADD. I was one of the troublemakers all through school. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't go to class in undergrad and med school. I just couldn't sit still. A lot of anxiety issues, anger issues. I was emotionally shut down because of trauma in my family, type A, narcissistic, all kinds of things got exposed. So luckily for me, and I've had a lot of luck, my wife of 35 years showed up. She's a therapist conveniently. So now I'm heading in the right direction. So she was the first time I really, experienced love and support. And that was huge. And then a dear friend of mine, Scott Streckenbach, who was a year ahead of me in med school from Green Bay. He helped me to fall in love with self-help literature. So those two angels saved me, and I have to go quickly, otherwise I start tearing up about those two. And then I acquired a master's degree in clinical research, so I became a clinical scientist, designed and ran clinical trials. So the medical background combined with the clinical science background, combined with my own issues and passion for self-help, this is what's been going on for me for 35 years. And I've experienced some incredible changes. So this stuff I have lived, but then over the last 10 years, said, what happens if we put a bunch of these discoveries together into practical tools and have a robust toolkit? What happens to groups of people? And the answer is incredible transformations happen pretty quickly. So I'm very optimistic about what we can do, especially as Americans. And so that's the basic idea is, can we aggregate a whole bunch of insights into practical tools? We'll talk about the agile methodology, which is to cycle. I want you to consider the agile methodology as educators, how to innovate and measure what's working and not working, because I've worked with about 7 school systems now. I have nothing but compassion for what you're going through. It's brutal. I'm in healthcare, and I'm an anesthesiologist in high risk obstetrics. So we went through COVID also, and we've had a lot of our issues as well. So we have a lot of parallels, but I think what you're going through is much harder than what I'm going through in terms of behavior issues and deficiencies in learning, and parents losing their minds, and you suffering from burnout. So I'm hoping to teach you some tools to help stabilize in order to then get back to being joyful about the vital role that you have. Make it accessible. We'll show you some really incredible results. But again, the airplane analogy is that, when the oxygen mask falls, the airplane has turbulence, it's important to put the mask on yourself first before you try to help other people. Otherwise, you're going to start passing out. And so it's important for you to take care of yourselves. You as educators are some of the most kind people I know. And so your tendency is to self-sacrifice. And I think you need to take care of yourselves a little bit more systematically so you can be there for the long haul for the thousands of people that you influence. So that's the point of the 5 A's. So, and lots of people have helped, including Jeff Van Straten has been a big supporter of us, and a dear friend now. Paul Riemann is a trainer. Oh, you may know Michelle McGrath. She's an educator. I was named the superintendent of a school system. I'm blanking on the name, but it's north of Madison. So she was been very supportive in the educational space. But here's an example of a non-medical person who's become really good at teaching these tools to other people. So I want you to think about this affecting you, but also you starting to teach these tools to your students and other people in society. So here's some results. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because I want to get to the good stuff. But basically, in working with really positive effect on students in terms of resilience and reduction and the influence of social pressure, the reduction of social media usage. That's not on here, that data. Executives, school systems, but these represent different industries, multiple school systems. This is just one of them, but you can see eating problems before and after. This is based on a 12-hour intervention, using clinical science terms, intervention. But you can see a pretty profound improvement in eating problems, sleep problems, which is a huge thing, energy problems, except for when you survey teachers in May. That's not a really smart idea, I learned. There ain't no energy coming back. Chickens with your heads cut off at that point. That was dumb on my part to survey that particular school system at that point. Psychological safety improves. So this is psychological safety is the goddess of that is Amy Edmondson. Anybody have familiar with Amy Edmondson and the concept of psychological safety? Okay, so she's got a really great book called Fearless Organizations and another book, Getting the Right Things Wrong or something like that. It just came out. So she's out of Harvard. She studied this for 25 years, showing that psychological safety is probably the best predictor of organizational success. And so you ask questions like these, and I'll let you sort of ponder those questions for a second and think about the implication it has for your culture, your community, to be able to be very authentic and vulnerable and willing to innovate, willing to own mistakes, willing to share skills that you'd like to get better at. Like that environment, if we can create that kind of environment, that's beautiful. All right. So psychological safety improves. This is an aggregate of multiple systems. So that this is the holy grail is psychological safety improving. So a lot of really good things. And then finally, really profound is improvements in depression, severe depression, at least half the week, severe anxiety. And these are based on validated psychometric tools, about 5 of them consolidated into 2 big domains, mental health and psychological safety. And so you can tell, based on these profound improvements across industries, it's really hopeful. This is a very brief intervention. It's 5 or 6 2-hour gatherings over a 3 to 6 month period. That's nothing. B, the fact that everything is improving means people are shifting from what we call lower brain to higher brain dominant very quickly. So that's the only thing that can explain everything improving across industries. So we all have the capacity for going from, and I'll explain it in detail what lower brain versus higher brain means, but this is very exciting what we can do. Quick questions about the data. I don't want to, like I said, I'm happy to circle back to it, but it's just very hopeful. Any thoughts on the data at all? Okay. Excellent. All right. So now we're going to get going.